As we said, Annie on ImboSlice versus Kaiser from Tog, and we caught him right in the beginning of the action. Never feels good, but Annie having to force her way and start things off with a Vi. Coming back down to one room never feels good, but it looks like that's just the ideal turn 2 that he had for now.
Yeah, Vi Destructive, very powerful card. Not only having ganking, but able to boost itself up essentially every time you do need it by recycling cards from your trash. A little bit scary to be recycling a rune to pay the power cost for this so early, as Kaisa known for playing all these removal cards like Ray and Falling Star. So you could end up kind of paying pretty heavily for this, like the Vi end up paying 2 energy and recycling a power just to get hit by a single Ray, but can't do that on the first turn, quite obviously, as Ray is only hitting battlefields. But now we will see. What does ImboSlice want to do with this Vi? Are they going to push up into those Zon Warrens, as Zon Warrens was the battlefield of choice for ImboSlice? If you're unaware, it is when you conquer, you do get to discard and draw. So not only build up that trash, but go ahead and cycle through your deck.
And I can respect this. Annie wants to be aggressive towards Kaiser and goes for aggressive indeed, because goes with an offensive cleave into a 0 board, just in case, as you mentioned, there is a Hextech Ray coming by his way, which is interesting. You rarely see a cleave getting played out onto an empty board, but doing what she does, trying to play around those combat tricks are 1 for 1. Both of these players are going to go up as of now, but Reaver's Row actually favors both of these legends quite a bit, because they play so similarly. As you said, things like Darius are available to both players. Things as the Kaiser that Annie kind of flashed saying, hey, look what I have in hand. Or was that the champion? It might have been the champion. But wait, oh, never mind. He discarded the Kaiser from the Zon Warrens. That's what it was.
Yeah, so Falling Star getting dropped. Probably one of the more infamous Kaisa cards, in that you see almost every Kaisa list playing it. Putting back a single rune by using the Kaiser leader ability to potentially clear 2 units is like quite a good trade. Right here, unfortunately not able to clear both of the units, as the Noxian the Noxus hopeful only on 4 might, so 3 damage is not going to kill it, but does take out the Vi, which, I mean, good card to take out. That card is really powerful. Though I will say, Slice going on the aggressive here with the Kaisa Survivor, able to get the draw and then also the battlefield discard and draw, though it looks like maybe... Okay, thinking on the discard here. Yeah. Okay. So getting the cycle pretty heavily through the deck already. That trash is slowly building up for potentially another Vi Destructive, or even the Annie Stubborn, to then pull whatever spell you need out of it later in the game.
Yeah, exactly right. What we saw before with Annie players is those infamous late game plays like the Vi Ride Your Win combo. So you definitely do want to keep filling up the board. I believe now we hover over, there's a total of 4 cards right now, so nothing to scoff at yet, but nothing too powerful as well. We'll react with a flight, sending that Noxus hopeful back to the base, so won't be able to conquer. Kaiser thinking about perhaps responding just to try to get rid of one of these units on Annie's battlefield. Something like a Void Seeker does do 4 damage. So I'm thinking, if you do have Void Seeker, we saw 1 Falling Star, but Kaiser, well, there's 1 spell, there's many others following up along that. So probably has 1, but doesn't feel too great, because you most likely do want to develop of a Kaiser on your own, and you're just 1 rune shy from that Kaiser Void Seeker combo, but sends in the Poro, and I love this NA. This is a bluff here. 2 versus 4, you would never do that if it's not Reaver's Row, but Annie's saying, I'm not gonna deal with Annie's shenanigans, but goes with the Falling Star number 2. That's quite a bit of Falling Stars starting things off so early.
Yeah, Reaver's Row, really interesting battlefield in that it does create this little bit of a mind game, like you said, where you can bluff by pushing out that Poro. So what Tog did is pushed up a Poro with 6 runes ready and said, hey, you have no runes. I know you can't do anything here. I'm gonna say I have something, and if you do not respond to this, you are losing your Noxus Hopeful. Whether
Yeah,
Tog did have something or not, we don't know.
Yeah, usually you see it more with things like with green legends, right? With things like On Guard or Discipline. So it's cool to see Kaiser do it because she could have had things like a Stupefy, but most likely it would have been like a spell or something to deal with it, like a Hex Ray, as we mentioned before. So I love the bluff nonetheless. So that was a good play from Tog. Does get that conquer point going up to 2, and he's just having 1 point up on Kaiser so far. But plays the stacked deck, looks at the top 3, decides to pick up one of those cards. So perhaps playing that card out this turn, goes for 5, most likely another accelerated Kaiser. But no, it's going to be the Darius. It is the second card played this turn, so it does come in ready, and it does get that +2 might as of now. So thinking about sending it into Zone Warrens. It never feels too good. Oh, goes for the Reaver's Road. That's even better. That way you could protect it, force the Kaiser to have to use a spell. But the smoke screen, wait a minute, that brings him down to 4, or to 3 because it's -4.
Yeah, I'm not too sure I like this idea of pushing into this. I guess this is really tempo, where Tog's down to like almost no runes and very little on the board, but there is still access to that Kaisa, the Kaisa champion unit here, and he's able to save the Poro too with the Reaver's Row. So there are a lot of runes and cards dedicated there to clearing out that Darius. There still are 2 units on the battlefield, so things are not looking too bad, and the Kaisa champion unit is available. I don't know, it's a lot to dedicate. They're really saying that I want to keep my board.
Yeah, I think it was needed. It was like a little bit of a necessary evil because, as you said, it does come at a bit of a hefty cost. You're down to just 2 cards in hand, which is something we don't see too often from these Kaiser players. But trying to get back control of that card advantage, gonna be going accelerated Kaiser into Reaver's Row, so you will get that +1. So back up to 3 cards, not too bad, and evening things out because it's 4. Did any score? I'm trying to think back. No, I think it is 3 to 4 now.
Was I missing something there? Was Kaisa gonna win that combat? Kaisa was tapped out, no runes. I guess Annie is just trying to save the Noxus unit. I do feel like if that was the case and there wasn't something that I was missing, that I would like to actually see that trade, is that puts Tog down to no champion unit available, 3 cards in hands, and tapped out, versus the Annie that still has that Annie Stubborn available, 4 cards in hand and 7 runes. But I'm sure there was a plan, and I am looking forward to seeing what ImboSlice is doing here.
You know, you're so right. I think perhaps that early game bluff got to him a little bit because you're right. He was completely tapped out, so just 4 to 4. He had nothing up his sleeve. I like that play as that you said. Trade the Noxious. Not only do you neglect the point, but you also neglect them to draw. But perhaps this is what Annie had in mind. He says, preserve my unit, take out the Kaiser with the spell instead, and let's get up 1 point on my turn. So up to 4, or forgive me, it was 5. So Annie does go up to 5. It was even when Kaiser tied it up. So thinking about perhaps another Darius, instead it will be a Kaiser, chooses to pay the additional cost, or no, he does not. Just goes simple and readies the 2 runes at the end of Annie's turn. So another bluff. Tog did it again. Is he gonna fall for it? I mean, we say bluff, but it may very well be a real play. Kaiser has so much combat tricks, right?
Yeah, I think just looking back on that play, I feel like I do actually like the trade. So even though you're kind of trading the known Kaisa unit on the board for a random draw, right? Because he gets the Conquer, the Kaisa unit dies to the Void Seeker the next turn. But if you do hold the Void Seeker and you do take the trade, you can then Void Seeker the Noxus Hopeful, and then you deny the known Kaisa unit. So you're essentially trading a card in the hand for your own Noxus Hopeful. And when I'm in the driver's seat, which at the moment, and I think that Imbo still is in the driver's seat here, I want to deny as many resources as I can from my opponent, and in this case Tog, and keep all the knowns. Like in this case, a random card in hand is a little bit scarier for me than the known Kaisa on the board, because I can deal with the known Kaisa on the board. Okay, so now choosing to go for the Warrens, again, able to cycle here.
Yeah, I love it with the Zon Warrens. You basically draw 2, discard 1, decide to discard the Traveling Merchant. So it has plenty of cards to work with. Cleaves the Noxus Hopeful, trying to take over that Darius, but of course Reaver's Row is wonderful for Kaiser. Goes ahead, it keeps it protected, sends it back to base, but it did neglect him a hold point, so just keeping things in. And he's getting awfully close to game point, and he goes up to 7 from that Conquer, choosing to perhaps get something like, we saw Flight or Flight, we saw Gus, I don't think we saw Ride the Wind. So what spell does she want to get back from the discard? Most likely you can't really Gus any of these 4 to 5 might units, so Flight or Flight will be the option she decides to go for. It is a hidden card, so you should be able to hide it on one of these battlefields, more than likely leaning towards the Zone Warren, since you can't retreat something from that battlefield. But Annie has strong presence. This is pretty even matchup so far, but Kaiser just known for having crazy things. Of course you can't deploy a Watcher just yet, but let's see.
Yeah, this is not a super good spot for Tog, because not only do you have to deal with both of the battlefields, but you do have to keep in mind that there is the Flight and Fight in hand, and you have to make sure that you are not dying to the two base units as well the next turn. So keep in mind the... Oh, okay. Yeah, we did know this one. So what is the plan here? Clearly there is one.
I love this play. You go in with the Darius first before you play 2 cards, so even if the Flight or Flight gets used, Darius goes back on the ready and attacks for a number 2 times in the same turn, and I think that's just a little bit too problematic for any player. Is going to be scooping up the cards. Tog victorious, going up a single game in our best of 3 series
deck, and like the Traveling Merchant, which Annie does like to build up that discard. And then obviously, as we saw, the Vi Destructive, which was not seen later in the game. Maybe a bit unfortunate to have to play it so early. And then open yourself up to dying to that Hextech Ray, which I believe happened. Okay.
Yeah, I think
just
so.
Passing. Yeesh.
Yeah, quick turns. No one deploying any kind of unit nice and early. First one will be a Raven Blooms from Kaiser. Okay, nothing too crazy, but I believe Dreaming Tree is Kaiser's battlefield, right? I think she benefits more, but I've also seen Dreaming Tree on Annie. It's a little bit confusing when both of these players can make full use of both of these battlefields. Things like Flash for Annie, things like Retreat for Kaiser, and then Void Gate. It's just Void Gate. These players or these legends they're filled. They have a plethora of spells to work with, so it's a little confusing. Hopefully I got that right. Dreaming Tree for Kaiser, Void Gate for Annie, but I can see it either way.
Yeah, so actually it is the Dreaming Tree for the Annie, as we can take a quick glance. But yeah, having the hard play, the Noxus Hopeful from your hand is not the sign of a great hand.
Yeah, you never ever want to play it out for 4, but there we go. I did fix the thing, so it is Void Gate for the Kaiser. Goes for the Gus on the Raven Bloom. A little bit of a dicey play, but Tog would rather not try to waste any resources on protecting it. Would rather just play it out most likely than not, right? There goes, just deploys out another Raven Bloom. Pretty much the same one that came back to hand and passes it over. So both of these players very defensive. They have so many combat tricks in hand. They're saying, if you push, I'm gonna push back with things like a Void Seeker, a Hextech Ray, and I believe those are the only ones that are actions, because I think Falling Stars is just a spell, right?
Yeah, Falling Star is just going to be a spell. There is the possibility of Kaisa playing cards like Smokescreen still, as the Mind Color does have some cool tricks. You have the Retreat, the Smokescreen. It is a little bit scary letting the Kaisa deck just kind of freely ramp up like this, when you could potentially see like cards like Time Warp in the late game to just kind of scam the game away. But I mean, if all you have is a bunch of useless cards in your hand, what can you do, right? In this case, it looks like Annie just had a Noxus Hopeful and 5 spells.
Yeah, and I think a teeny bit of a dispute's going on because the any player wanted to play Cleave while the Noxus Hopeful was on the Dreaming Tree to maximize the draw and get the +1 draw from the Battlefield ability. But I think since you attacked, there's a window of opportunity for Tog to Void Seeker before, but it's not a reaction. But I know most players tend to, if you're worried about something like a Hex Tech Ray or a Void Seeker, you cleave it on the base, unfortunately, and then you send it up. So we'll see. Perhaps, I think we are getting a judge call here. I think they're having a bit of dispute. I'm trying to think back, because when you attack, you have focus, or you have the priority first. So there's the window to hit cleave, but then you could go with Void Seeker before the cleave resolves. Yeah, focus is first on attacker.
Yes. And I do want to say here that the cleave should resolve unless there is a reaction from Kaisa.
Exactly right, because it won't be fast enough for the action. So, yeah, does respond. So goes down to 3. Effectively 3 HP. Perhaps thinking about following that up with a Hex Tech Ray since he committed to the Void Seeker.
Yeah, it's very expensive, but when you know your opponent just has no units, I mean, that might just be the cost that you want to pay, right? Say, like, that's fine. I know you can't play anything. Your hand is just full of dead spells. I'm going to throw everything at this.
Perhaps you're still talking about it because they haven't done too much. I mean, he committed to the Void Seeker, but it looks like he's taking it back.
That is a bit crazy.
You know what? I think it's a dispute because it's Assault 3. And Assault 3 is while it's an attacker. But because the battlefield is empty, it doesn't become an attacker because there's no combat. There's only a showdown. I think that's what's going on here. It doesn't proc, stays at 4. So, man, the intricacy, especially as early, I mean, to be fair for these players, the game is not even out. We are about 1 week away from English release worldwide. So I could cut these guys a little bit of credit, but these are the high stakes. We have to be fair. We have to abide by all the Riftbound core rules, and that is in the rules. So Assault doesn't trigger, as we said, on an empty battlefield. So Void Seeker is more than enough. You could go something like a Flash if you do have it. Retreat it back to base because Void Seeker can only target units within the battlefield. So if you're able to recall it back to base, that will be one way to protect it. But man, the intricacies, huh, NA?
Yeah, this is pretty unfortunate here for Slice, as I'm sure not everyone is 100% up to date on all of the rule updates. But I will say, I believe this cleave interaction of Assault not giving the bonus on attacking an empty battlefield has been there for plenty of time. That should not be new information, and that's just something that kind of demonstrates your skill and knowledge of the game as a player. And Tog, in this case, I mean, it seems like Tog clearly knew that you do not get that might bonus when you are going for that empty conquest. In which case, able to get a good trade out of it, as the cleave was used, like nothing. The cleave got him nothing. You didn't get the draw, and you didn't
draw.
Get the
Yeah. At the very least, it did net him 1 draw. Gets that second play Darius out, so does get accelerated, or pretty much acting like accelerated, so does get at least 1 point for his turn. A little bit of some crazy situation, but I think we got it all together. Gonna be passing it back over to Tog most likely, but before he does so, he's gonna tap completely out, knowing that he's anti, so he gets those back so quite freely, a free traveling merchant. So now it does pass back to Kaisa and has a whole lot of runes to work with this turn. Oh
wow, okay.
Byron the Thunder Song. We rarely see that played. When you play me, opponents can't play cards. That's so busted.
Yeah, that's a really good one, especially into like the Kaisamir or the Annie deck, where they really want to hold these combat tricks, and you just get to say, yeah, none. You have no combat tricks. Your extra runes are wasted.
Yeah, now on the flip side, the Raven Bloom does get the full use of Cleave, so it does go up to 5, and then the 1 extra from the Raven Bloom, so it did go 6 to 5. So it was enough to conquer the Dreaming Tree, so that was a pretty optimal turn for Tog, I will say.
Yeah, that's an interesting tech. I really haven't seen too much of the Byron's Thundersong yet. So very interesting to see things being adaptations in the deck lists.
I couldn't agree more. If it's time to bring out the spices right here when a little bit of money's on the line, having Annie think twice, saying like, what else can Tog possibly be bringing to the table? And this is looking, I mean, it has a powerful ability, but also has decent amount of stats. 5 might does get over a good amount of creatures from the Annie player. So Traveling Merchant thinking about where he wants to go. If I was him, I would not be thinking about Dreaming Tree with those 2 runes at the ready for Kai'Sa. So keeping it straightforward, going for the Void Gate and ride the win on... Oh, no. Wait. Oh, the discards. Apologies. That was the discard from the Traveling Merchant.
Yeah. And I do think that this is a good play here. The Traveling Merchant, just 2 might, so it's dying to pretty much any removal spell anyways. So might as well shove it up on the battlefield where it doesn't matter, because you are dying regardless. But does choose to drop the Hextech Ray to remove it, trying to keep that board presence. There are accelerate options available for Annie if Annie does want to contest the battlefield. In fact, quite a few with the Kai'Sas, the Darius, who, while not accelerate, does sort of function in a similar way. And then like we just saw, the Ride the Wind that got discarded, right?
Yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow. Not too tough, but it didn't feel too good for the Annie, but still has a lot of cards to work with left. So thinking about what she wants to do this turn, plenty of runes. We've seen things like Accelerated Kai'Sa. We've seen things like those infamous Dariuses. So goes for 3, perhaps tapping the 2. So either of those cards, there will be a Darius. That will be the first card played. So 1 more card and the Darius ability goes online. Perhaps thinking about going into either of these battlefields won't be a bad idea. There's only a single card or a single rune available to Kai'Sa. Is it a retreat? Because a retreat is a draw 1, channel 1. That would be very, very good value for Tog. If not, it's just going to be a simple, straightforward trade.
Yeah, that's the very traditional Darius combo as he was meant to be played, with the Darius leader, where you play your Darius and then you play a Legion unit and then you get both of the bonuses, right? So funny to see that in the Annie deck, but the Fury Legion package is quite strong.
Oh yeah. So throwing it back over to Kai'Sa, the Byron does get ready, so probably eyeing down that Void Gate at the very least. You need something like a Void Seeker, which Annie does have more than 3 runes available to her. Void Gate brings that 4 damage up to 5, so that's all you need to get over the Thunder Song. But man, we saw Darius from Annie. I'm sure Kai'Sa has some of those up in mind as well, but instead goes for a Cathian Rain, a total of 12 damage being brought out onto the board of Annie's. That's 2 damage 6 times. So much to work with.
Yeah, Cathian Rain, not the most common Kai'Sa card. I would not be surprised if this was a sideboard card. Pretty good against these decks that put a lot of very wide board, which honestly we haven't seen Annie go too wide, but I mean, clearing the Darius without actually having to go into a showdown is pretty powerful, because you don't really have to worry about any of those action speed tricks, right?
Yeah. I think that was a perfect way to use it.
Nice. And drops the Noxus Hopeful. A lot of value out of that. A Cathian Rain getting 2 units out of play. So what is going to happen here for Annie? Oh, okay.
There we go. Sneaky deckhand. Pretty much a free point for the Annie. Goes up to 3 now. Has plenty of runes still available. Thinking about what else can she do, because that was card number 1. Has more than 5 runes available. Could do something like a secondary Darius, or was that her third already? Did we see more than one Darius? But instead goes for the Annie. No wonder she was looking through the drop, thinking about what can she get back. Perhaps it was the Ride the Wind she discarded earlier.
I don't believe there are too many options here. It's like Ride the Wind, there's the Cleave, and that might be it. I don't think we've seen a Void Seeker yet, have we? Okay, so regaining a little bit of card advantage with that Annie, but not the best board state here, as Tog still has not committed that Kai'Sa champion unit, and the oh my, okay. Really wants to keep our deckhand around. Huh.
A little dicey though, because as we've seen what Kai'Sa can do, she has plenty of accelerate units to work with. And speak of the devil, one of them being Darius. So second card deployed, Darius goes online. Now it's a whopping 7 going into the sneaky deckhand. You already used your flight or flight. I love the way Tog plays. You withhold as much information as possible until the perfect opportunity, and that's exactly what he did. So Void Seeker gonna be doing quite a bit of damage on that Darius. 5 total damage because of the Void Gate, adding this additional bonus damage to every spell. So this is gonna be a 1-for-1 trade, but the Stupefy coming onto the sneaky deckhand, lowering the might down to 1, and that is a good conquer from Kai'Sa. I believe she's up to 4 now, so closing things out ever so slightly.
Yeah, it's really scary as the Annie player to be playing so aggressively with these small units. For instance, using the fight or flight to try and save your deckhand, because the Kai'Sa deck has so much removal, so many of these really powerful spells, and then the Darius as well. I mean, it's very hard to keep these units on the battlefield. And the more runes you spend, the more cards in hand you spend to try and keep them alive, the worse it feels when the Kai'Sa player just drops in another card. And in this case, the Darius was getting played regardless, right? So it didn't really change that much. All
Right.
you ended up doing was like using some runes and your guy still died.
Right. I mean, he had to do what he thought was best in the moment, but Tog had the game plan all along. Annie going with the accelerated Kai'Sa, trying to get the +1 draw. She's finding herself rather low on card size or hand size. Does get the conquer though, so up to 4 points so far. And 3 cards in hand, tying the card advantage so far for each player. Goes with the Cleave on the Annie, playing it before the combat, but there's a unit on the other side of the battlefield, so it wouldn't matter too much. So 6 might going into the 5. Is there another Stupefy? Even better for Tog. It's going to be a smokescreen, lowering that might effectively all the way down to 2 might. And I don't think you could do much about it unless you're going to gush your own champion, perhaps? I don't think so.
Yeah, this is a really, really scary spot here. If Tog does have a time warp in hand, the game is just over. As there are enough units on the board, and you can take 2 points in the next turn, and then go ahead and take another 2 points with the time warp. So, oh no, okay, so it is passing right over. Will we see a time warp for game? No, okay, we will not.
Instead goes for an accelerated Kai'Sa of his own, deploys it onto the Dreaming Tree, or not onto the Dreaming Tree, but into the Dreaming Tree, gets that conquer up to 6, and the big bad wolf, the Falling Stars, goes into the opposing Kai'Sa, leaving behind just a lonely Annie on Annie's base. Man, things are going from bad to worse if you're the Annie player. Look at the board state, battlefield control, base board development, Falling Stars number 2. Oh my goodness, did Tog have all the answers? This is absolutely a one-sided endgame here. Up to 6 total points. Kai'Sa primed to close things out as early as perhaps the next turn is looking like.
Yeah, and good foresight here from Tog to retreat the Darius, You don't need to have the Darius on a battlefield, and having the Darius on a battlefield does open you up to cards that any plays, like the Tibbers, which is going to deal damage to units on the battlefield. And the name is failing me, but there is another any themed spell that does damage to units on a battlefield. So yeah, really no point in keeping the Darius up there, and instead just keeping it back, which lets you then, like we saw in the first game, do a double attack right with the Darius, where it kind of makes you immune to that fight or flight.
And speaking of the devil, Darius of her own, trying to contest the Dreaming Tree, will get paid off, so goes up to 5 points for her. Still, there's so many units on the back line for Tog. There's only 2 cards for Annie. I mean, you could maybe play another unit, but that will be a concession. Annie revealing her cards, a simple Vi, a simple Ride the Wind, but you were at 5 points, so you couldn't deploy any kind of Ride the Wind combos to end things off. Tog will be going up one more game, so totaling his score up to 2-0, starting things off very, very well for him.